What is going on, everyone? This is Ryan with Automatic Comics. Thought I would make a video today about some of the books that it's useful to be aware of when you are out there, hunting through bins, all that kind of stuff. Like, I like the little bit of treasure hunting aspect of searching for comics. And there are a couple here that I wanted to talk about. And the other reason I like to talk about these is because I just always think it's kind of funny how you've got people in the comment sections of these types of posts that think they are speaking with so much authority, yet they have no idea what they're talking about. And instead of, I talked about this in a prior video. It's like, instead of being a jerk, maybe try to learn from something when someone posts something, and take that bit away with you to increase your knowledge. And so what we're talking about here, this first one, is we're talking about this book here this person posted about on Reddit. It says, I'm in Delaware for spring break. I've been hitting a bunch of antique stores. Somehow I found this gem buried in with a bunch of overpriced books. I'm guessing the seller either missed or didn't know what the newsstand meant. And so this is Daredevil, Volume 2, number 111. It's from 2008. This is the first appearance of Lady Bullseye. Now, you can see from 2008, it's a 5.5. Yes, usually a modern book like that is not going to have any value. I mean, it's just basically going to be like a couple bucks. I mean, this is still a minor key, First Lady Bullseye. So it's going to have a little bit of value, but very little value. But this book is the newsstand. And being the newsstand, that makes a big difference. And this is one of those things where you've got people that definitely don't care if something is a newsstand or a direct. They don't care about, like when you're talking about the old Star Wars books, like if it's a 35-cent variant and, that kind of stuff. Like, they just don't care. But it doesn't mean that everybody doesn't care. It's like, that's one of those important things that you've got to learn. And I feel like a lot of people struggle with is that your opinion is not the only opinion that matters. There are lots of people out there, lots of people that collect different ways, that collect different things, that like different things. Tons of people think comics are just in general stupid and a waste of time and money. But a lot of us would disagree with that. But that doesn't mean that our opinions are invalid or their opinions are invalid or whatever. Some people just don't like comics. Some people don't like newsstands. Some people don't like directs, whatever. But different people like different things. And because of those little niches within hobbies, certain types of books, certain types of these unique situations can result in a lot of additional value for a comic. So here we're talking about the newsstand. And the thing with newsstands, there are a number of different places you can look for this type of information, but I pulled one up here on Go Collect. It was something that someone put out on newsstands versus directs, survivability and rarity, to kind of give you an idea what types of books are out there. And so when you go down here, you can see this is one of these kind of pretty standard little charts that you'll see. So back in 1979, there were way more newsstands than directs. That crosses in about 1986, where you have about 50-50. And then very rapidly, you end up with way more directs than newsstands. And so you can see when you get to here, which is about 2008, it is about 1%, 1.5% of the books that are published are newsstands versus directs. The other thing that this author goes into is about the survivability of newsstands versus directs. So directs tend to have a much higher survivability rate than newsstands as well. And so even though in these earlier timeframes, when you had more newsstands than directs, it does not mean that actually more of them survived. And so when you go down and you look at a little more information that they have, you can see the survivability here. By the time you hit 1982, even though there are still more newsstands than directs, the actual number of newsstands that survived is lower, and it gets smaller and smaller very rapidly. And by 2008, it's about 0.15%. It's about 10 times lower than what this actual number shows up here by their estimates. And that's just because people that are buying directs, that are buying from a shop, are much more likely to just have that thing directly with a bag and a board and all that versus something that's out on a spinner rack at some store. You've also got this a little easier to read here. This is on one of the CBCS forums, just kind of showing the direct percentages so you're not having to look at a chart. You see in 1975, 94% versus 6%. all the way up to 2013, where it's 1% versus 99%. So that's where, what we're talking about here. And so, yes, this book having the newsstand versus the direct makes it much more rare, and also adds quite a bit to the value. So when you're looking at GPA, one of the pricing tools that I use, GPA analysis, you can see that when you're talking about the newsstands, if we go down through all the sales here, I believe there hasn't even been one that sold in the last 3 years. I think the last sale was like 2022. Yeah, this was the most recent sale. An 8.5, $3.99 newsstand edition sold for $200 in 2022. Now you compare that to an 8.5 regular, you can see $70 in 2022. So it sold for about 2.5, 3 times as much. And that tends to be the case. Like, these books will sell for big premiums. And as you get to higher and higher grades, where it's much harder to come across that book in a 9.8, that multiple can often increase very significantly. So for example, one that I'll show is that a lot of people will know. It's Ultimate Fallout #4. So, the first appearance of Miles Morales. I don't know if a 9.8 newsstand has ever publicly sold. I know there are a couple that are out there, but yeah, I don't think. Yeah, okay. So it wasn't recently. It was back in 2020 that a 9.8 newsstand publicly sold. You can see here in 2020 sold for $8,100 versus, let's look at a 9.8 in 2020 here. And let's see, let's actually check when exactly that sold, because it's going to matter, because that's around when the comic boom. So June of 2020. And so if we go down to June of 2020, and for the standard direct, I mean, this book sells, like, look how many of these sell. So you go down to June, and this book was going for about $1,000, maybe $1,400, somewhere in that range, because there's some a little below 1,000. So we'll say $1,200. So then we had a newsstand that sold for 8,000. So in a 9.8, it sold for about 7 times, 6.5 to 7 times as much for that newsstand. And there are some people that are saying that, the newsstand will even sell for more than the Daredevil variant, than the 1 in 25 variant. We don't really know, because we haven't had a 9.8 newsstand sell for a while, but we have had a 9.6 sell in 2023. 9.4, here you can see, sold in 2024, 3,500 versus a 9.4 here for around 370. So that's about 10 times as much. Keep going down. You've got a 9.2 that just sold in January for 2,750 versus a 9.2 for 260. So again, about 10 to 10.5 times as much. So yes, even if you don't care about the difference between newsstands and directs, there are plenty of people out there that do, and they are willing to pay a big premium for it. So it's one of those things that's just useful to put that little piece of knowledge in your head, so you can figure out, or something you can look for when you're out there. Now with this book, so let's jump back to Daredevil number 111. So Daredevil number 111 from 2008. I mean, this person bought this book for $40, and we don't have a sale down at, a 5.5 with this $3.99 newsstand edition. Now, what we can do is we can say, I mean, the low here, and I think it's come down, obviously, since then this was comic boom time period, was 200. I would say there's probably a bare minimum value, because I think there's only about 14 or 15 of these on the census versus 150 or so for the regular. It's probably $100 book. That's around what I would guess. I don't think that this was like a screaming steal or anything like that, but I think it was a good buy. I mean, I think it was a much more valuable book than $40. You're still gonna have to find the right buyer, somebody that wants that newsstand if you're trying to sell this. But I do think probably around $100 is around the value for this book, versus if you're talking about the regular. I mean, you can see here an 8.0 sold in August of last year for $20. So I do think that there's that added value there. I'm like, this is less than case cost, less than the cost to create the book. So I do think the value is there. I do think it was a good buy. But it's just something to be aware of. Look for that kind of stuff, because you just never know what you're gonna find. Now, the other one I wanted to talk about was this post here. And so what this is this is on the comic book collectors Facebook group. You can see, well, this just happened. The guy at my LCS told me that it was just a plain old newsstand issue. So I didn't even open it up and look before pulling the trigger. I think I did pretty good on this one, pretty good on this $150 gamble, still shaking. I always, I kind of laugh about the shaking ones. There's a lot of jokes in the Pokemon community about that, where people are just like, they'll say that they're shaking when they got something, and it's like some just like random regular card, because people were just saying that so often with books they picked up. But this is a Hulk 340 classic McFarlane cover, Wolverine versus the Hulk. And you see, you know, you got the newsstand, which for Mark Jewelers, it's going to be a newsstand. And he's just showing the little corner here. And this is that Mark Jewelers insert. If you've never seen these, basically they're like kind of like a glossy, different feeling paper interior that's inside of the book. Now, these were sold typically on military bases in various locations around the US. I don't know if they're sold internationally, probably, but I don't know. And so there is a significant premium that is paid for these, because again, they're newsstand, they tend to take more damage. They're much rarer in general having this insert. And it's one of those things where there's going to be plenty of people that don't care. You know, they just want the book, they want the cover or whatever. They don't care if it's a newsstand or direct or Mark Jewelers or a National Diamond insert or whichever, you know, one it is out there. But there are a lot of people still that do. And when you look at this book, I can't see the back cover. I don't know exactly what the grade is. You can see, you know, some wear along the spine. It looks like from this angle that it probably needs a press. Like there's some indentations and little tiny creasy things on there. It's probably like a 6, you know, somewhere in there. I mean, it looks pretty nice. 6, 6.5, maybe in that range. I don't know if it can hit a 7, but somewhere in that range approximately. This person paid $150 for it. If that was just a newsstand, that's probably around what that book is worth. You know, he's paying around market for that book. If we jump over to GPA again, we've got Incredible Hulk 340, and we'll just, you know, scroll down to like a 6 or a 6.5. You can see a newsstand for 6, 126, 6.5, 140, 70, 203. So, you know, in that range, he's paying around, you know, what that book is worth. Because in these prices, a lot of times those books will sell around the same, whether they're graded or not. Or in these grade ranges, they'll sell for about the same price. But if you look at Mark Jewelers, you can see here, Mark Jewelers, this one last sale for a 7.0, 260. Last sale for a 6.5 just in December, 280. Last sale for a 6.0, 275. Keep scrolling down. Now we're down in 2020, a little too long ago to have a relevant sales point. But so you can see, like, you tend to get about double, give or take, the newsstand price. This one was pretty close. I feel like this Mark Jewelers was probably a pretty good pickup, but you can see here, it's actually picked up in price over the last few months. So it was like 166, 150 versus 280. So again, about double. But then as you get up to higher and higher grades, let's go up to some high grade copies. Here we had a 9.8 Mark Jewelers in 2023 sell for $15,000 versus 3,644 for a standard newsstand. So selling for about 4 to 5 times as much. We go down to a 9.6. We had one sell just last year for 2,573 versus 500, selling for about 5 times as much. So again, you can see how the multiple that you get with a Mark Jewelers tends to really accelerate as that grade goes up, because they are much, much less common. This is what also drove that whole CGC comic scam swapping thing that happened about a year and a half ago, a little less than a year and a half ago, where the person was swapping in books and saying that it was a 9.8 Mark Jewelers when it wasn't, and that kind of thing. And because you see what these premiums are, you know, I mean, like somebody would buy, say like a 9.8 newsstand for $3,000. They would pick up a 9.6 or a 9.4 Mark Jewelers for like 2,700 or 1,400. They were swapping them in, and you sell it for 15,000. You know, and so that's why that was happening. That was the motivation there behind that whole scam, was that people could get this huge amount of money off of doing that. But that's not the purpose of this video. This is just to kind of talk about why these things are hunted for by people. You know, they're rare, they're uncommon, and people like to collect them, and so that adds a significant amount of value. And it's just, I don't know. It's just one of those things. I think a lot of people tended to be more okay with this one in the comment section. You know, people seem to be pretty happy about this pickup. I think there are some people that maybe didn't totally understand this was the Mark Jewelers. You know, but I think people are generally pretty happy about this. I mean, maybe not this guy, but for the most part, people are pretty happy with this one. This one, not so much. The comment section, just, you can tell, did not care about the newsstand versus the direct, and that's why I just say, it's like, just take something away from this, like learn from it. You know, now you know that newsstands, especially much later newsstands, can have a pretty significant amount of value because they are very rare. And Mark Jewelers, same thing. They can have a pretty significant amount of value. It can add multiples, 2, 3, 5 times as much. Depends on the book, depends on the grade, all of that, but still something to hunt for. This is why you always want to, you know, flip through your books when you get them, because you never know what might be hiding on the inside, or in the case of this one, what might be on the outside that you actually have to look for to make sure you differentiate between that direct and the newsstand. But hopefully you enjoyed this video. Hopefully you take some information away from this, helps you in that comic hunt out there, and I will see you on the next one.